Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm just doing a test so that you can hear me. If you can hear me, just write in the chat box, please. Thank you. Susan, can you hear me? We gotta wait for Jerry. Unfortunately, I did not manage to get Dipendra in, but I'm going to send him an invite and see if he can attend. He should not be muted. Unmute, unmute, unmute.
Yeah, all of them is unmute.
No, they're not. Okay. Okay, hello. Jerry, I can see you in the room. If you can speak so that we can test. Okay. Speakers?
Hoparlörler çalışıyor mu? Açık mı?
Are they on?
Yes, we are on.
I can't hear Jerry. I can't hear Susan either.
You call me on this phone, and otherwise, good luck.
Okay, thanks.
And see you later, okay?
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, great. We can. Hi, everyone. We can actually hear you.
Good.
Great.
Good morning.
I'm going to send an invitation to Dipendra, straight like a link to WebEx, and hopefully he can connect like that.
Susanna? Hello?
Hi, Jerry. Yes, this is Farzaneh. Hi.
Hello. Just making sure
Yes,
you
can you hear
me
us?
okay?
Is the sound clear?
Okay. The sound is not the best from my end. I can't hear you that well, but I can hear you okay.
Okay.
It sounds a bit distant and a little bit echoey, but it's okay. It's fine. It should be fine. Can you hear me okay?
Can you hear me, Jerry?
They're not.
Can you hear? All right, hang on. Can you hear me, Jerry?
I can hear you fine, Susan.
Great. Okay, so you can hear me okay.
I can hear you clearer than I could hear the other lady.
That's
Farzaneh, is it? We'll have Susan run the whole meeting. That's grand.
Now, what is this? This is captioning. Whose is it? the test? Who's doing the test? Hi, Peter.
Sound check. Sound check.
I can't hear you, Farsane. Please come clear. Thank you. So,
Sound check. Sound check. Sound check. Sound check. Sound check. Efendim. Sound check. Sound check. Tamam. Sound check. Sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sound check. Sound check. Sound check. Sound check. Sound check. Sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sound check. Sound check. Sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sound check. Sound check. Sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sound check. Sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sound check. Sound check. Sound check. Sound check. Sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sound check. Sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sound check. Check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sound check. Sound check. Sound check. Sound check.
Morning, Andrea.
Hello, Misha. You can hear me. Okay. Susan? Good morning.
Yes, now, good morning, Peter. Now I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Susan, are you there?
I am there. Can you hear me? Peter, can you hear me? Hi, Andrea. Can you hear me?
Hello, Suzanne. Well, we can hear you.
You can hear me great.
Yeah.
And I just turned on my camera. Can you also see me?
You look great.
Okay, great. I'm going to turn my camera off now.
Right, and probably you like to switch off the mic as well.
Yeah, I'll put it on mute.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good morning, Peter.
Hi, Jerry. I'm
Hi,
back.
Peter. I'm going to dial off now. I'm going to hang up for a couple of minutes and dial back on just a minute or two before 9 because I found in the past I was cut off after 90 minutes. So that means I'll get the whole workshop. You know what I mean? I won't be cut off halfway through.
So it seems to me that we are going to...
I'll dial back in at just a couple of minutes to 9 or 9 o'clock, okay?
Okay. Okay.
I'm available on email or text if you need me.
We are going to start in 10 minutes, I believe, and then just try and join.
I'll dial in just before, because I know now that it's working, so it should be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Peter.
Test. Test prova 1, 2, 3, 4. Say. Hey. Geliyor mu? Kameraman arkadaşım. Geliyor mu? Test prova 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeterli mi? Biraz yükselteyim. Test prova 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Test prova 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Can we
Yeterli
test
mi?
the captioning, please? This is Andrea,
İşte konuş. Buyur.
Small Island Developing States,
Sound
round
check,
whatever.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I want to test
1,
the
2, 3,
captioning.
4.
Yes, lovely, thank you. Who is our captioner today?
Aktarabilir miyiz abi?
Lisa, thank you very much,
Ses
Lisa.
deneme
This
1,
is
2,
Andrea.
ses deneme 1,
Thank
2.
you, Lisa.
Ses deneme 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Hi, Susan. This is Farzaneh. Just wondering if, because we do not want to mute the participants, if you can mute yourself when you are not speaking, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Sure. I thought that I had myself on mute.
So basically, that's we do not want to mute any participant, but I think if you can mute yourself when you are not speaking, that would be great because there will be noise conflict.
No, I completely understand, but I thought I had myself muted until just now. Could you hear me over the last 20 minutes?
If you did that, I'm just saying this. I don't know if you muted or unmuted yourself, so I didn't try.
Okay.
But I'm just saying. Thank you very much.
No problem. I think, should I log off now and come back on?
Susan, you're just too close to the phone. Can you back off a little bit because you...
Oh, sure. No problem. How's this?
Now, the thing is, what I think Farzaneh is trying to say is they're not going to mute you here, that the controlling of the mute system is going to be yourself. So when you're not speaking, you mute your microphone or on your phone, how you're doing it, and then you will be able to enter in at will when I recognize you. I think that's what Farzaneh is trying to say. Thank you.
Yeah, I understand.
Oh, good.
Are you saying that I'm too loud from here?
That's a little better. You were a little bit too loud from there. I probably
Okay.
heard that. Am I too loud for you?
No, you're perfect.
Okay, I know. Okay.
So, Andrea,
Yes. Yes.
I was going to log out and come back in since we had this 90-minute issue, no?
Yes, I think we still have 90-minute issues. That's why we've got you and Jerry coming in fairly quickly. And then what happens is that perhaps what's going to happen is you'll have to redial in because they haven't solved that problem. Is that correct, Farzaneh, or she's on the phone? You haven't solved the 90-minute problem, have you?
Okay, so I should stay on now.
All right, fine. Okay, thank you.
So, Andrea,
Yes,
I'll stay on now,
we're going
and
to...
then if I log out, then I'll log back in after I've spoken.
We still have an echo from you.
I don't know what to do about that.
Well, you're understandable. I would just pace your speaking timing not so fast, which is difficult when you're giving a presentation, I know. But don't worry, it'll work.
Okay, thanks. I'm gonna mute myself.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your email this morning, too. Are we ready to go? Or are you? I can't hear you for.
If you just allow me a couple of minutes so that I can get Dipendra.
Thank you, Farsane, we will.
Hello, Dipendra, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Farsane, for getting it done.
The transcript is wrong, so I have to contact the transcribers. Yeah, if you just give me 2 minutes.
It's fine. You go get what you need to do. Thank you, Farsane. Have a small delay.
Morning, Jerry's back.
Hi, Jerry, you're back. Okay.
Okay, I'm putting myself on mute now, okay?
We're just waiting to get the captioning, the right captioning screen working, and then we're ready. Can we test the captioning again? We did work a minute ago. Yeah, we've got it. We've got the captioning. I know, we have a problem. We can only do one or the other. Oh, right. Okay. You need to see your slides. You do not have them on your screen. Put them on your screen, and then and who's changing the slides?
You can give your slides to the remote the technical moderator here, and also we will give it to the technical guy in the back, and then you can just go next. Yeah, with that remote control.
I thought we gave those to you yesterday.
Sorry, you gave those to Susanna. So if they are on the computer, they should be on the computer. Yeah. What's the title?
Well, come here and come here. Would you speak to them? Tell her, Arsenic, you have all the presentations. If you put it on your computer, and then when you move your slide, then you press that and it changes up there. It's sort of like doing this. Okay, that's how we have to do it. For those of you on the webcast, I'm sorry we are waiting for the go-ahead. We have been checking technical difficulties. We still don't seem to have captioning properly. Is the captioner? Yeah, okay. Okay, can you just type, not test, test, test. Can you type what I'm saying, please? Thank you, that's great. All right. You want that closer? All right, thank you. Can we start? Hi, Roy. I think we're okay. Okay, Roy's here. All right. Great. Okay. Welcome, everybody. I would like to welcome you to the joint G3ICT DICAD workshop. Now, G3ICT stands for Global Initiative for Inclusive ICTs, and we have partnered with them before, and we are also the Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability. My name is Andrea Sachs, and I am the coordinator. We have also our co-coordinator, Peter Major, here, who will be the remote moderator for those of you wishing to ask questions who are remote online. I'm going to quickly say everyone's name and give a quick introduction as to who they are in just a minute. But what I would like to say first is that with multi-partnerships, we can make it accessible for persons with disabilities to participate in the global society through ICTs. And global surveys have, in fact, demonstrated that a critical success factor for implementation is multi-stakeholder participation. So this particular explanation is on the web, so without further ado, I don't wish to take any extra time, but let me quickly introduce Francesca Cesar Bianchi, who is Vice President of Institutional Relations at G3ICT. And next after her, we will have Susan Shore, who is the head of the Special Initiatives Division of the Telecommunications Development Bureau at ITU, and she is in Geneva and participating remotely. Then we will have Jerry Ellis of Feel the Benefit, who he won't mind me telling you he is blind and he is participating remotely. And his organization has been volunteering with the ITU and DICAD for many years about promoting blind access, especially on remote participation. And then we have Auxir Fat. I say it wrong, but I'm going to do my best. I'm going to just do what I said. Mr. Akinar, whose first name, forgive me, is difficult to pronounce, who is the head of the Department for Consumer Rights, Information and Communication Technology Authority in Turkey. And then we have Mehmet Emin Demirci, who is Vice President of the Confederation of the Disabled in Turkey, former President of the Turkish Federation of the Blind, and a board member, and also EBU, the European Blind Union. And then, last but not least, we have Mr. Nasser Katani, the Chief Technical Officer for the Middle East, Africa, and Microsoft. So without further ado, I would like to turn the floor over to Mrs. Francesca Cesar Bianchi, please.
Thank you, Andrea. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to join you today for this joint ITU, G3ICT and the CAD workshop, and to share some insights on the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, its ICT accessibility provisions, and some of the implications for multi-stakeholders involvement, in particular of persons with disabilities, in policy making. I would like to begin my remarks with a quote from a person living with a disability on the value of the internet in his daily life. If anybody asks me what the internet means to me, I will tell him without hesitation, to me, a quadriplegic, the internet occupies the most important part in my life. It is my feet that can take me to any part of the world. It is my hands which help me to accomplish my work. It is my best friend. It gives my life meaning. This is a quote from Dr. Zhang Su, founder and director of the Bethesda Rehabilitation Ministry of Anshan province in China. Here I would like to give you some some of the demographic realities. There are more than 1 billion people living with some sort of disability. The world population is aging, and everything is run by digital interfaces. So there is a major impact of ICT accessibility on education, employment, social and cultural opportunities. So what is the role of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and its provision on ICT accessibility? The convention is a unified framework for policies and programs with a global impact. And also it's a timely opportunity for ICT leaders. In these slides, you can see the status of ratification of the convention in the world, and how many countries have ratified the convention, how many have signed the convention, and where is no action yet. And so few countries, I mean, there is really not too much action. So if you are, for those of you who are not familiar with the convention, this is a legal framework that was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in December 2006 as the 8th Human Rights Treaty, has been signed to date by 158 countries and has been ratified by 148 countries as of September 2014. And it defines accessibility obligation for all areas of ICTs, including web accessibility, impacting all 148 states parties of the convention. The CRPD includes a number of ICT accessibility provisions to the states parties, and I named just a few. Article 9, which is the article dedicated to accessibility. Article 21 also involves freedom of expression and opinion and access to information, in particular the internet. Article 9 is addressing accessibility barriers in the digital age and promote accessibility standards and internet usage among persons with disabilities. The convention goes also a step further in addressing the participation of persons with disabilities in policy-making processes. In particular, Article 4.3 of the General Obligations is a cornerstone of ICT implementation. And it clearly states that the development of new policies and regulations or the revision of existing policies and laws should be done in consultations with persons with disabilities and other stakeholders. So it's a very important part. The benefits of the participation of persons with disabilities in policy making, persons with disability obviously are a great source of knowledge. Knowledge of issues, knowledge of solutions, and they are the best advocates to convince policymakers. And also now, right now, most disabled persons organizations are aware of their new rights according to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. G3ICT publish annually a progress report on ICT accessibility implementation among state countries. And our report in 2012 showed that the most successful countries in ICT accessibilities were those involving persons with disabilities, organization of persons with disabilities in policy making. However, the 2013 G3ICT policy progress report shows that still there is a lack of participation of persons with disabilities. And this has been evaluated by identifying some key success factors for countries' capacity to implement through regression analysis for significance. So at the question, in your country, are there any financial supports for organization of persons with disabilities and NGOs working in the field of digital accessibility? Only 34% of the countries interviewed responded yes. As well as at the question if in your country is there a forum for active cooperation between NGO working in the field of digital accessibility, only 24% of states says yes. And as well as at the question if in your country there is a systematic mechanism to involve organization of persons with disability working in the field of digital accessibility to the drafting, designing, or implementation and evaluation of law and policies, only 13% of countries says no. Yes, sorry. So most importantly, I would say only 11% of states surveys involve persons with disability in ICT accessibility policy making. So in order to help foster a multinational, multi-stakeholder policy dialogue for each of the critical areas of ICT accessibility, G3ICT partners with the ITU to develop a report. And the report is called the ITU G3ICT ICT Accessibility Policy Report and will be published in the fall 2014. It was developed by ITU and G3ICT following of course, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, and is intended as a resource for ICT policymakers, regulators, and other stakeholders, including NGOs and persons with disabilities and parliamentarians, to promote ICT accessibility in national markets. And is designed to assist in revising existing ICT laws and developing new policies for ICT accessibility. And this report is organized by type of ICT because the accessibility needs and requirements of persons with disability vary by type of ICT, obviously. So it includes a legal policy framework and 5 modules, one dedicated to public access, one to mobile, one to TV and video programming, one to web accessibility, and one to public procurement, which have been identified as critical areas of ICT accessibility. Susan Shore from ITU will give you more insights on this report. Just to conclude, the ICT, the legal framework, and each individual modules address current key issues and specify the rule of engagement of persons with disability in policy making. I'll give you just an example. Fostering consensus building and inclusive policy making. It's a key issue, and this is done through public consultations with with persons with disabilities, including establishing a committee on ICT accessibility and publishing accessible documents. And so these are one of the key issues, but for sake of time, I just wrap up and I thank you for your attention. And I pass the words to the next speaker, Susan Shore.
Thank you very much, Francesca. I am not going to say anything except turn it straight over. We started late. Susan, would you like to go ahead, please? Susan Shaw of the ITU. Can we hear you, Susan? Are you there? We have to put... Is the presentation up? Susan, can you unmute yourself, please?
Okay.
Okay, Susan, that you're there. Now, the presentation has not gone up. Just give us 1 minute. And Shore is spelled S-H-O-R-R, please. Thank you, Captioner.
It's actually S-C-H-O-R-R. That's okay.
We're good. Thank you.
Okay.
Dyslexia reigns.
That's all right. I was just saying that it's a pleasure to be with all of you today. If you could go to the next slide, please. Are we on the next slide? There we go. So my colleague Francesca Bianchi has just introduced the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. its provisions on ICT accessibility, and she's given a quick overview of our Model ICT Accessibility Policy Report. I'd like to talk to you today in more detail about how we can transpose the ICT accessibility provisions of the Convention into national policy and legal frameworks. And we can take a closer look at what's required by examining 4 of our 6 modules. If you can go to the next slide, please. Now, as many of you in the room know, many advocates worked tirelessly to include ICT accessibility into the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The question now is, how do we take the broad provision and get it translated into action? In every country, the ICT sector is governed by national policies, legislation, and regulations. And the key to ensuring that ICT accessibility becomes a reality is to ensure that it is included in this enabling legal and regulatory framework. This would include updating existing ICT legislation and developing new policies, regulations, or codes of conduct. At the same token, many disability laws were written before ICT accessibility was a well-defined concept. They may only refer to physical buildings and transportation, so any older disability laws also need to be updated to add ICT accessibility. In addition to national ICT laws, we have found that public procurement laws have proven very effective in promoting the availability of accessible ICTs in national markets. Why is this? If the government, usually a very large buyer of ICT equipment and services, procures only the most accessible ICTs it can, this creates a market for accessible ICTs. Local suppliers will only stock accessible ICTs, making them available for all consumers. And local developers and manufacturers will only produce accessible ICTs. This generates greater competition, drives costs down, and promotes a greater availability of accessible ICTs. Next slide, please. So let's look inside Module 1, which is the Legal Policy and Regulatory Framework. This addresses changes needed to existing ICT or electronic communications laws in countries. It identifies different options for regulations because different countries have different frameworks. Some countries regulate through license conditions or authorizations, some promulgate regulations, and some adopt soft regulation where industry establishes codes of conduct. So our report recognizes all 3 options and tries to give options for countries depending upon their own regulatory framework. This module also looks at a key cornerstone of ICT regulation, which is universal access. Universal.
Susan, we're losing you. Just a minute. Can you hear me? What's happened?
Service. I can hear you just fine. Should I keep talking, or are you trying to test something?
You're back. You're back. That's okay. I think you're back.
All right.
Just carry on where you left.
Okay, I'm going to assume that you might not have heard what I was saying about universal access and service, and repeat that. Okay. So what I was saying is one of the most fundamental concepts in national ICT legislation is the concept of universal access or universal service. And currently, universal access and service policies focus on two key issues. One is access to networks, and two is affordability of services. And while these are very important for persons with disabilities, they're not sufficient. We need to add a third pillar to the universal service and access frameworks, which is ICT accessibility. And with that, we can greatly ensure ICT accessibility for persons with disabilities. If we go to the next slide, which is on definitions, we also think in national legal frameworks, existing ones, we have to add some new definitions and revise some existing definitions. So for example, if there's no definition of persons with disabilities in the national ICT law, we have to add that. If we have a definition of ICT users, we have to make sure that it refers explicitly to persons with disabilities. As mentioned, we have to revise universal access and service definitions to also include ICT accessibility, and likewise revise underserved community definitions to include persons with disabilities. As Francesca already mentioned, the revision of any existing ICT policies and laws or the development of new policies should be done in consultation with persons with disabilities and other stakeholders. We can move to the next slide, please. Now we're going to take a quick look at the module on mobile phone accessibility. Mobile phone accessibility is extremely important because so many people have mobile phones. There are nearly 7 billion mobile phone subscribers in the world. But many of these devices are not accessible. This is probably, the mobile phone accessibility policy is probably the easiest for a country to implement, and which promises the greatest impact due to the widespread uptake of mobile communications. Again, if we go back to public procurement laws, because public procurement laws in some key manufacturing countries require accessible ICTs, there are many accessible mobile handsets available on a commercial basis in the global marketplace. The key issue is that for the policy is to make sure that mobile operators stop these and make them available to customers with disabilities. Secondly, mobile operators in retail outlets need to train their staff on how to serve customers with disabilities, and they have to run promotion campaigns so that persons with disabilities know these solutions exist. Other policy measures include promoting affordability, such as discounted rates or even special tariff plans for the deaf and hard of hearing who don't use voice services. They can have text-only plans. Mobile operators need to ensure that persons with disabilities can use mobile phones for emergency communications, including sending real-time text and using video relay. And again, because some countries may regulate mobile operators through regulations or industry codes, our report includes both options. Let's go to the next slide. TV and video programming accessibility. We use both terms in our report because some countries have not yet switched to digital television, and they may have laws that only refer to
We've lost you again. Gentlemen, can you facilitate that, please?
It's about internet connection.
It's the internet.
Yes.
Susan, I'm sorry, we have lost you. So
Can you hear me again? I can see.
now we can, and I'm going to have to say we're going to have to wrap up in about 1 minute, and I apologize because it has.
That's okay.
Okay.
That's fine. That's fine. So I believe that the slide is self-descriptive, but basically the policy would require closed captioning, audio description, audio subtitles, and signing, require awareness raising so people know that these services exist, and that includes making them available, broadcasting them on electronic programming guides. If we go to the last slide, it's about public ICT accessibility. And there we're talking about public payphones and telecenters. The idea here is that we would progressively upgrade existing public payphones and telecenters so that they have accessible features. And we would require any new public payphones or telecenters to build in ICT accessibility. My last slide in conclusion is we can see the importance of developing national legal and regulatory tools. We need to have consultation with persons with disabilities in developing these tools, and we need to conduct annual reviews on implementation, share them with persons with disabilities to obtain their valuable feedback for moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Susan. I appreciate that, and I'm sorry for the technical difficulties where you were cutting in and out. We're going to have questions at the end because of the fact that we want to make sure we can get all the presentations in, and we did start late. So I would like to turn this over to Jerry Ellis, who is participating remotely. Is his presentation up? Please. I have to put his presentation up. We have just Susan's. We need Jerry Ellis's presentation. Is it up? It isn't. Just a moment. Sorry. Jerry, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We're just waiting to get the presentation up for you.
Okay, we just put up the title page for now.
Yes, it's up. All right. So when you want to change the slide, just tell them and go for it. There you go. This is Jerry Ellis of Field of Benefit.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody, from warm and sultry Dublin in Ireland. First slide there, please, populations. My first couple of slides are just going to quickly go through the number of people with disabilities in our purchasing power, and I'm going to skip through them quite quickly. In 2012, the World Bank and the World Health Organization produced a report which many people would be familiar with, which estimated that there were around a billion, at least a billion people with disabilities in the world. Next slide then, please. But if you go on even a year from then, this is spending power slide, the fifth quadrant analytics had already put that figure up to 1.3 billion people in the world with a significant disability. Add to that 1.3 billion, 2.2 billion people who are emotionally connected, for instance, brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers, wives, husbands, and whatever. And if you add them all together, fifth quadrant analytics reckon that this group of people have a spending power of around $8 trillion annually. This is a massive market, and we don't want to ignore it. Next slide, please. What about if there were no standards? What would the world look like? So what I'm going to do is talk about standards in general first, and then move on to speak more specifically about standards as they relate to people with disabilities. So if there were no standards in the world, what would the world look like? If we ask, I ask people, organizations about standards, the first thing they often say is they stifle innovation. So let's see if we can quash that one. Imagine a world without standards. Imagine an air transport industry where you could only fly within your own country. You couldn't fly beyond your national borders. Imagine ICTS, telecommunications and technologies, where you could only make a phone call within your own country, and you couldn't phone to another country like Turkey because the standards weren't there to allow that to happen. Could you imagine a world like that? If I'm interested in computer technology, there's a management standard in there called ITIL, but I'm not going to go into the details of it, but that's a way of measuring technology and technology terms within the technology industry. And imagine the chaos if there weren't standards within the technology industry in general. So I think if you look at standards, you very quickly find that standards are not at all stifling. They are, in fact, a springboard. They're a starting point, not an ending point, and a springboard for innovation. Next slide, please. What are the benefits of standards? They open up national and international standards. And if you look at what we've already been saying about air transport and telecommunications, and we now can use them transnationally, and Susan touched on that when she was talking about policies. So they open up greater markets. They're common criteria against which to manage. So if you've got 20 different companies working in the same industry, and you've got people who only know the rules within their own industry, then they can't move to another industry. It's much easier to manage staff, to manage how processes work, if there are common policies and common standards used right throughout that market, which is the international market. It's a great defense against litigation. If you're being sued for something, you can say, but we used the international standard. It's a tremendous defense against litigation. They make skills transferable. If I have a skill that's according to a standard, I can move to Britain or France or Germany or Australia or whatever, so my skills are transferable, and that gives me as a person tremendous benefit. So you can see that the benefits are wide and varied, but they're economically and socially beneficial. If we move on this now and try to move to how do standards affect people with disabilities. So the next slide is standards and people with disabilities, please. Let's look at some of the standards that some of us might be familiar with. The World Wide Web Consortium talk about standards in the area of the web and other technologies. But their web content accessibility guidelines have been adopted as an ISO and IEC standard 40500. So that is now a standard. If you look at Adobe, traditionally Adobe PDF has been very, very difficult for people with disabilities. But way back in 2008, their accessibility reference version 1.7 was adopted as an ISO standard 32001. Okay, so that is now a standard. If we move forward again, PDF has moved forward to what's called PDF/UA, UA standing for Universal Access. And this has been adopted as an ISO standard 14289. So that, again, is a standard. It makes it easier, and it gives people something to measure about to make sure that their PDF documents are accessible. If we look at the area of communications, we have a move towards total communications. Total communications is a way of seamlessly mixing video, voice, and text. So it is usable by people, we say, who are deaf, who have speech impediments, who have learning difficulties, and so on. So that, again, is a way that national countries can create policies around these standards. And I'm going to skip the last one there because because of time. I'm going to scoot straight on to the next slide. Universal design. Susan has already mentioned it. Francesca, I think, also mentioned it. Universal design is approach to design which includes the needs of as many people with disabilities, or as many people in general as possible, including people with disabilities. And if you can't give direct access, then you give equivalent access through some other method. It's mentioned in the UN Convention and recommended in the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. It says that you should include as many stakeholders as possible, just what Susan was talking about. It leads to economic benefits by increasing the market, as we've already spoken about. It includes social benefits because people with disabilities are more involved with their societies. So there's a social benefit to not only people with disabilities, but also to their societies by their inclusion. All of society gains, and I can't think of one single person who loses out. So it is a win-win situation. Next slide, if we could, please. I want to move on to one very specific area of standardization and people with disabilities, which I've been involved with for the last 3 years. This is called Guide 71. ISO and IEC, the international standard bodies, developed Guide 71 way back in 2001, and the European standards bodies adopted it as their Guide 6 in 2002. A guide in itself is not a standard. What a guide does is it tries to promote a particular issue amongst standards developers and bodies that develop standards. And in this case, Guide 71 and Senelec Guide 6 is talking about including the needs of people with disabilities. So, in other words, what it's saying is Guide 71, ISO IEC Guide 71 and Senelec Guide 6 try to tell standards developers, bodies, how to include people with disabilities in the standards development process. And it also tries to encourage people who are developing standards on anything, whether it be building cars or building accessible technology, how to include the needs of people with disabilities. Okay, so a quick history of guides. I'm just going to call it Guide 71 to make for simplicity. The original Guide 71 was developed in 2001. In the meantime, it was found that it was getting out of date. So it was decided to have a review. That review has gone on for the last 3 years. I was as part of the group which reviewed that on behalf of ITU and behalf of the European Disability Forum. The two groups were set up, one called JTAG, and that's the Joint Technical Advisory Group within ISO to review Guide 71. Separate to that, in Senelec, which are the European bodies, there is SAGA. SAGA is the Strategic Advisory Group on Accessibilities. So JTAG were the main group that revised this document, and I was part of that JTAG group. The document has got, at this stage, as far as being out for public comment, it has been out since June. The public commenting period finishes on the 15th of September. So if people are interested in commenting on the current state of the guide and suggesting different changes, it is still possible up to the 15th of September. And if you want to contact somebody involved in the workshop here, we can show you how you can do that if you're interested. The target is to publish the finalized document in October or November of this year. And my last point, and a very important point, is that this is the first time that Senelec, ITU, ISO, and IEC, all of those bodies are planning to adopt the same document and adopt it as a standard amongst all those bodies. That's a first, and it's going to be a marvelous activity, a marvelous result when it happens. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's a quick fly through the idea of standards as they relate to people with disabilities. Thank you for your attention. Last slide there, everyone, just to thank you. And I hope you have a really good time in Istanbul, but also a very productive time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you very much for that informative report, especially about Guideline 71. I'm now going to introduce Mr. Oscar Fathi Aknar, I'm going to get it right eventually, who is going to give the regulatory perspective on e-accessibility for persons with disabilities. Would you like to go ahead, sir?
Hi, everybody. Good morning.
We haven't got your presentation up. Just one moment, please. Sorry. Can we get... Hang on one second.
Yes, you're right.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Today I will talk about our actions as a national regulatory body in order to eliminate the barriers of ICT access for the people with disabilities in Turkey. I hope that my speech could make a contribution to fixing such a similar access problems. Access problems around the world. Next slide. Okay. My presentation is as follows. First of all, I would like to touch upon legal background, and then I will try to focus on the problems of disabled people in Turkey, and then what our national regulatory body decision has. And finally, I would like to make some comment about our regulation. As you know that in Turkey, electronic communication law was enacted in 2009, take into account the specific needs of disabled people in our country. And based upon our communication law, we enacted our strategic plan. In our strategic plan and with our communication law, the aim of both of these legislation is to ensure that consumers, including disabled people, can equally access ICT services at affordable prices. In 2011, we started a project called Ensuring Equivalence in Access for Disabled and Users. First of all, we established a working group in 2011 composed of representatives from various non-government organizations, academic institutions, and our operators from mobile to cable operators and fixed operators, and from government side, the Ministry of Transport, the Ministry of Family and Social Policies, and all of these representatives try to identify the problems of the people with disabilities in the ICT sectors and try to solve their problems. They try to make a comment, make a suggestion to solve their problems. In accordance with their studies, we understand that in Turkey, the person with disabilities constitute around 20% of our total population. It means that there is around 9 million disabled people living in Turkey. Therefore, it is really very important for us to pay special attention to such a vulnerable groups to address the digital divide problem in our society. So we attempt to find out their needs. In these studies, we understand that the operator's webpage couldn't be accessed by the disabled people, and the operators had limited services which are designated especially for disabled people. And furthermore, maybe sometimes we see that some of the services are designated for disabled people, but especially disabled people do not aware of the services. So the specifically designated services were not easily accessible by disabled people. And also we understand that our disabled people couldn't access, especially blind people, couldn't access their invoice or quota information which is sent to them by SMS, they can't see the SMS, so the problem is they have big problems, and we try to solve their problems. And we see that many times blind people are losing, and location information was not provided to the mobile operators, so getting lost was a significant problem for the blind people. In accordance with working group suggestion, Turkish NRA make a decision to solve their problems, especially for mobile operators. Our NRA made a decision that within 6 months, all of our mobile operators provide the following services. For example, subscription contracts and bills in Braille alphabet or as a voicemail to blind end users will be provided within 6 months. Voicemail, it means that, as I said before that, all of the mobile operators send quota information to SMS to the blind people, but the blind people couldn't read the SMS. So voicemail to blind end users will be sent to notify the consumer's limit and their tariffs. So, and the location information will be provided. And I didn't mention before, but especially deaf person, when you call the deaf person, they do not aware of your calling because he's deaf. So we required our mobile operators to provide the information the person you have called is a deaf. So you can send the person an SMS. And it will be free of charge. And SMS or data only services, at that time we didn't have SMS or data only services for our mobile operators tariff plan. And in accordance with our decision, SMS or data only services which will be provided to the disabled people. Apart from this regulation, all operators, not only mobile operators, but also fixed and cable and internet service providers, were required to accessible web pages. So disabled people can access what the operators are provided to them. And all of the operators, more than 200,000 subscribers, provide our disabled people discounted tariffs. And apart from that, we also see that all the services provided by our operators are not easily accessible for disabled people because on their web it is not in the same page. So we oblige to our operators to gather all the services regarding to disabled people under the same title of their web page. It is also very important. And we also see that many people many disabled people do not aware of the services which is provided by our operators. Therefore we prepared a television spot. And then we shown all this television spot our main TV channels, and also we prepared official briefs which were both in Braille alphabet and voicemail, which were sent to our non-government organization, especially disabled organization, to send all this information to their members. In a conclusion, we analyzed that with these studies, our operators became more aware of the specific needs of the disabled persons. So it is highly important because if they are aware of their needs, they can provide the services to them. And also we try to increase the awareness of the people, especially among the disabled peoples, via our TV spots or informative briefs. And finally, many new services have been provided to the disabled peoples. I hope that it will help their life. And I would like to thank the public and private partnership with this project because it help us to understand our disabled people needs. That's why thanks to all stakeholders for their efforts. Thank you, of course, your patience and listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Akpınar. I really appreciate learning about what you're doing here in Turkey, and it actually sounds very, very good that you have taken a lot of different disabilities into account and are communicating directly with persons with disabilities. Thank you. Now, the next person who's going to present, and we're running a little behind, but we're going to make it, is Mr. Mehmet Iman Dermici. Did I do it all right? I did it all right. Thank you. Who is the president of the Turkish Association of the Blind, and I probably didn't do that right, but would you like to go ahead? I'm going to move the mic for you and give it. You're going to move yours. Okay, that's great. Can you turn it on? Is that just a minute? Let's get it a little closer to him. Okay. And do you have a presentation that's going up?
No.
No, you're just going to speak. Okay, that's fine. Then I turn the floor to you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Istanbul. Well, as you said, started to say, I am the vice president of the Confederation of the Disabled in Turkey, responsible for international affairs, and I'm also a member of the board of the European Blind Union, and I have some other duties at the Turkish Federation of the Blind and some associations. Sorry for my voice, because I had well, unexpectedly come kind of cold. Well, I want to mention a few issues in such a short time. I mean, maybe connected to each other. Still, I wanted to emphasize the points that nobody has already among the speakers has not pointed out. Well, it's very easy to make repetitions anyway. Well, United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, well, accepted like say, in 1948, and since then it was the only defined right for a person to have an internet connection. That's the only right added to that the catalog of human rights declared in the Declaration of Human Rights since its adoption. Well, it reveals that an internet connection is now very important, not vital for a person to get connected to the world. When we see that significance, and then when we see the implications for the disabled people to have access to internet for disabled people, it doesn't coincide. I mean, as blind people, for instance, if we blind people want to get internet, to use internet facilities in like shopping, online shopping, or payment, online payment, there's capture problems. I mean, we need always sound, and some links should be described. I mean, when we see these difficulties, it's not comparable to the sighted people to use internet. Well, of course, there are some regulations, rules to how to make these facilities available for the disabled also. I mean, this information is available, and why it's happening? Because blind people are using screen readers or braille displays, another medium between himself or herself and the computer. Not like sighted people. Sighted people see what's on the screen. And blind people need an intermediary transmitter to make all the information on the screen available, or translate for the blind. And it makes different. In addition to that, of course, graphical displays, explanations are also difficult to get translated. Well, all these difficulties or challenges should be, of course, accommodated in a way. Well, European Blind Union has been working on this for more than 10 years already, and we have already developed some guidelines, web accessibility guidelines, reports all around, I mean, on all issues for accessibility. Well, we have been campaigning in Europe also on behalf of the governments and the European Union, also Parliament of the European Union, to get some kind of directive, web accessibility directive. As the result of these endeavors, the Parliament of the European Union has made the first reading in February 2014 for such a web accessibility directive, and it's on the way. Well, it covers a lot of issues, of course, but the European Blind Union and also the European Disability Forum, which is the umbrella organization of about 2,500 organizations all in European Union countries. Well, Turkey is not a full member, an observer member. Still, we are also part of this work. And well, it's on the way. I think in coming months, some achievements will be achieved. Well, due to this advocacy activity of the European Disability Forum and the European Blind Union as its one of its members. But when we talk about some issues specifically for Turkey, well, unfortunately, we don't have a general regulation for web accessibility issues. I mean, we don't have such a legal framework to push the public bodies to make their websites available also for disabled people. But due to some positive climate towards disabled people in last few years, some organizations and some banks, for instance, and some public bodies approach to the disability organizations to get some kind of help, assistance for their web design actions. But these are not, this is not a general practice. Well, somebody at the organization or the company who has some kind of knowledge about problems of the disabled, and then they say, okay, he or she comes forward and then say, oh, let's do that. And then due to its this goodwill, some things happen. But we need a legal framework for such work. I mean, we also, of course, thank to the Telecommunications Information Authority, I mean, represented by Mr. Akpran here, and that was an interesting presentation. We would like to urge them also to make their activities also known among the disabled people, also thanks to their campaigns also. I would like to see their activity to be widened to cover the web accessibility issues, not only the mobile solutions. Of course, there is a lot to say, but in a short time, of course, this should be enough, and then we can, I hope we can, in coming days or months, to have to talk about other issues also, and or maybe widen our scope of activities. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for giving us a perspective from only a place that you could speak from. I appreciate that very much, Mr. Demirci. I'm now going to give the time over to our last speaker, Mr. Nasa Katani, who's from Microsoft. So please take the floor.
Thank you, Andreas, and thank you for the opportunity to be with you on the panel. At Microsoft, we recognize the importance of the disabled community for many years, and we've done many things in terms of engineering, engagement, working with the ecosystem of partners and so forth, engaged in policy, and worked with NGOs on various fronts, and obviously the work that we're working with, for example, the GIFT ICT in the NITU on establishing the model policy work, and we're happy, we're proud of that, and we really think as a company we need to certainly do more because there is a lot to be done. But as I look into the issue of accessibility and people with disabilities, I actually I look at this from a much bigger problem or angle. When we think about people with disabilities, we think about physical disabilities, etc., or aging population. The reality is, if I take myself and I go to China, I feel disabled. I can't read and write. What's in there, I cannot communicate and so forth. So for us, on a daily basis, even if we think we're not in positions, the reality is we are ourselves in positions of having real disabilities in being able to communicate and so forth with people. And as I look into the evolution of technology, and that from that perspective, I think the scope is much bigger. And not to add to the fact that if the region where I am coming from, which is Middle East and Africa, one of the most the biggest disabilities, I would say, is the issue of illiteracy, where many people in our region of the world are illiterate. So the issues of, writing an SMS, etc., is becoming even more complex. So the reality is all the issues of disabilities are massive, frankly. And not to mention that, many of these people in those parts of the world don't have internet access, right? So just adds to the complexity of the issues they face every day. So as I look into the evolution of technology, and it's interesting because we were talking about how we're trying, 15 or 20 years later to make SMS accessible. But I look into how technology is evolving, how I look into the issues of, new user interfaces. I look into issues of, Internet of Things, and how, technology is becoming, as, things that we wear, we have on us. It's available in the streets, etc. We have stuff such big data, machine learning, and how we can capture information so we can help people. The reality is these technology evolutions are, on one side, going to be providing opportunity to make it very easy for serving people with disabilities. So that's the beauty, that's the promise that I see. But at the same time, if we don't do it right, and if we don't innovate right, we will again miss the opportunity of serving this community. And I think it's important that we recognize that as innovators, but not only us. I think the overall community, governments and policymakers, NGOs, etc., so they can help us understand those issues. I think I'd like to make 3 recommendations or 4 recommendations in terms of how I see, policy being working, which I think are for me very important. The first one is I'd like to see government leading by example. I just don't understand why governments, websites, for example, are not made accessible by design, just by design. There's no point of, discussion on those things. Government, whatever they do, they need to have accessibility built in, because when they do it, then they set the floor, they set the reference for others to do, whether it's the banking industry, whether it's utilities, whoever, they will follow the rules. They don't need legislations, these guys, they will do it, right? What we need is the government just to go and provide, accessible services for people with disabilities. So that's number one. I think most importantly, this is the opportunity for us to have, to set policy for inclusive education. I think the most vulnerable people are, people with disabilities that are young, still at the education, our young generation. And I think the opportunity of, technology and the way technology is transforming education is great and massive. And if we do the right thing from a policy perspective to make sure that our kids that have, disability issues, etc., are part of the education system properly, working with the other kids, etc., that will, in the long run, create an inclusive, society where, people with disabilities will be just part of the society, normal society, not just a separate community and we try to, say it's 20% or 10%, whatever the number is. The reality is just part of society and we should not be measuring those. So inclusive education is absolutely important. At the same time, I think there's a third policy recommendation I would like to make is that, while innovators, and I put myself in it, and we innovate and we would like to make sure that we serve the community. I think innovation in technology should not come at the cost of privacy and respect of privacy for the most vulnerable. And I'm thinking about, how myself, when I have to go and, read the privacy policy of a website that I visit, which I actually don't do because it's very complex to read, etc. So how do we, and how I see evolution of technology happening, we should make sure that, we're respecting the privacy of the most vulnerable as we innovate and as we bring, services to them. Because that's a very fundamental piece, and I don't want us to ignore that. And finally, which is probably, I would say last but not least, and I think it's important, this is an area where we still have a long way to go and we need to learn. And working with NGOs and the people who really understand the problem is absolutely critical for us, to make sure that we address the problem properly. So involvement with NGOs is extremely important with government and the private sector to address the issue. Thank you, Andreas.
Thank you, Nasser. We've worked together at the ITU many a time, and I'm always grateful to you for perceiving the fact that governments really do need to do something, because without participation and regulation, a lot of things don't happen. I think it's kind of proving the point of this workshop is that without multi-stakeholder involvement, we aren't going anywhere. So we're hoping that will encourage people to do that. Now, we have not much time for questions or comments, and it's 10 minutes. And due to a late start and some technical blips, we did get there. So, Peter, do you have anybody on there for questions?
No, Andrea, for the time being, I don't have anyone.
Okay. But I do know Dipendra, who is blind, who's calling in from India, and it is my practice since he cannot directly access WebEx because of the situation with the screen reader having one audio stream and WebEx having another. He can't follow the meeting and use his screen reader at the same time. So anytime I know that I have a remote participant who is blind, I ask them directly, Dipendra, would you like to make a comment, and can you hear us? Dipendra, are you there? I think we've lost him. What a shame. Would anybody in the audience like to make a comment or two? Please tell the captioner who you are and go ahead, please. Thank you.
That one. Hi, thank you, Andrea. I'm Derek Cogburn from American University and the Institute on Disability and Public Policy. Delighted to see everyone here this opening session this morning. And I appreciate all the presentations, and particularly appreciated the example from the Turkish government. As our colleague from Microsoft said, government should be leading by example, so thank you for sharing what you're doing here. And I just want to ask all of us, particularly you, Andrea, how do we prevent ourselves from preaching to the choir, which is in some ways what we're doing this morning? We should have more people here. This is a topic that is so important, and I think continues to not receive the central attention it should in IGF, and I just want to talk about how we might get more people involved in this subject.
Thank you. You didn't say your name. Could you please do that, please, for the caption?
I thought I did.
Did you?
Yeah, Derek Cogburn from American University and the Institute on Disability and Public Policy.
Thank you. Okay, it's Cogburn, C-O-G-B-U-R-N. B-U-R-N. Thank you, Derek. If you're directing it at me, I think everybody who works for IGF ought to be in these meetings that are on accessibility, and it should be part of the requirement of being involved in IGF. There is a problem in information passed down. There are people who come into different jobs, different places of work, different organizations, and who organize meetings who are not trained in accessibility awareness. And this has been happening in IGF with the best of intentions and the love of the people who do know and do try. Sometimes what happens is that the information is not down. When I arrived here, I had absolutely no problem in talking to the boys who are running the technical aspect, and I recognize Peter has somebody online who wants to say something. So it is everybody getting on board and having accessibility awareness and training before these meetings go out and are organized. That's one view, but I don't want to monopolize. We have somebody, Peter, can you go ahead and tell us who it is?
Yes, Andrea, it's Suzanne who would like to react to the question.
Susan, please go ahead. You're not being heard, Susan. Can you unmute yourself, please?
I'll respond by chat. You're unable to hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to respond to Gary Cogburn's question from an ITU perspective and say certainly we do need to move from preaching to the choir. And I'm very delighted to let you know that at a recent ITU conference, the World Telecommunication Development Conference that was held in Dubai just a couple of months ago, IT members agreed to 3 regional initiatives on persons with disabilities that would help countries in the CIS region, in the Europe region, and the Arab region to develop their ICT accessibility.
Susan, we've lost you again. I'm sorry. Can you try again, please? I believe that's the internet connection problem. I'm sorry, Susan. If I can go on, this was at the World Telecommunications Development Conference that was held in Dubai. And what Susan is talking about is the fact that we have, in fact, made great progress in some of the areas that she was just briefly discussing also in her presentation, where we are working together with different countries, especially in the developing world, as well as in Europe. Are there any other comments from the audience and from the panel? Would the panel, anybody on the panel like to comment? Oh, okay. Can you identify yourself, please, for the captioner?
Morning, Andrea, and your panel. My name is Miki Ndlovu from South Africa.
Can you speak close?
Oh. Morning, Andrea, and your panel. My name is Miki Ndlovu from South Africa. M-I-K-I, that's my name. Thank you so much for the presentations. I think they've been very informative. I think my comment is really around how as South Africa we've been trying to get the operators, the mobile operators, as well as the broadcasters to come on board and make their services accessible for persons with disabilities, and how all the time they mention the issue of cost and saying to us we must try and ease the pain of trying to impose all these regulations on them. I just need some assistance and advice on what can we say to the operators around the issue of cost, because they always raise it to say, if you say they must do subtitling, they must do this, they must do that, it is going to cost them more. But they understand and appreciate that these are things that have to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Miki. With the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, it's illegal. If they signed it and ratified it, they can't say that anymore. They are violating a UN treaty. And what I'd like to say, and I do know we've had conversations before, vote, walk with your feet. It's a democratic country. And the way that the American Disabilities Act was put into place was that the deaf community got so adamant about being excluded. The deaf community actually carried the ADA in the US to start with. It was organization of persons with disabilities who have a vote, who learned that they had power collectively. That would be my answer. Anyone else like to comment on that?
Andrea?
Jerry, go for it. Sorry, Jerry, I should have asked you. Go ahead.
Hi, just a comment on that, maybe to relate it to what happened in the past in the area of accessibility. Cost is always the first thing that's thrown at us to say there is an extra cost for including people with disabilities. I'll make a couple of points. When we tried to introduce accessible transport in Ireland, we were told it would cost 15 to 20% more to have accessible buses than inaccessible buses. But when the accessible buses were available and they were brought into Ireland on a trial, it was found that they were accessible to people with disabilities, older people, people with temporary disabilities like broken limbs, parents with prams, people with heavy shopping, whole load of people that it was never envisaged that it would support. And you'll find the same is true as technology. We found the same with curb cuts and various other things. So you'll find that it doesn't just support people with disabilities. The second thing I'd say is that the government itself has a huge purchasing power. If the government makes a simple decision that it will only purchase accessible technologies, in this case, as the Department of Education did in the United States, then the providers have to provide accessible technology. If they're going to provide that to the government, they're not going to provide different separate versions of the same for the private sector. So once governments make that decision, the decision is made. And the final point I will make is that cost is only relevant if there is a differential in cost between one set of providers and another. In other words, if one telecom provider in South Africa has to make everything accessible, but the others don't, then maybe they have a case to say that there is an extra cost. But if all organizations have to provide accessible telecommunications infrastructure and so on, then there is no disadvantage or advantage to any group. So once you get it going, it is self-perpetuation. You will find out more people than you think will gain. Thank you.
Jerry, thank you. I have to cut you off. We have come to the end. Peter, do we have one more comment?
Yes, Andrea, we have a comment from remote participant Gunilla Spring. Just getting back to Derek's question, she added that she is going to raise these questions during ICANN, and it will raise the question with ISOC and other international bodies. And okay, so that's it.
Thank you very much, and thank you during ICANN. That would be great. We have to end. The next session has to begin, and I wanted to say thank you for those people who did come, and I agree with you. Maybe we should have IGS publicize us more to be able to get more people in, and I'll rely on some of you to do that. Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank my presenters. They did a fabulous job, and I hope we can do this again next year. Thank you.